Good morning,
Morning, everybody.
friends.
Good morning.
Okay, so let's get this started today. Just a little brief introduction about Brass Out Loud and ourselves again. My name is Rebecca Carew. I'm one of the founders of Brass Out Loud. In addition to that, just a little rundown of what Brass Out Loud is, what we're doing, how we came to be, and all that good stuff. So, Brass Out Loud. We kind of formed this organization after multiple conversations regarding the lack of diversity that we see amongst many presenters in workshops, seminars, and stuff like that. So we decided to be the change that we want to see in all of these, awesome presentations and workshops that, we want to see more diversity and we want to see other people's voices being heard. So we developed Brass Out Loud based on these conversations, and we are running our own workshop. It is going to be Friday through Sunday, January 8th through the 10th of 2021. So coming up in just one very short month at this point. So we are very, very excited. And Melissa is going to introduce herself briefly and give us a little rundown of our faculty and our schedule.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everybody watching. So happy y'all can make it. My name is Melissa, and I'm a trumpet player, currently based in Austin, Texas. Really happy to be a part of Brass Out Loud. I'm just going to give y'all a brief rundown of the faculty that we have. One that we have right here with us today is Miss Nikki Abissi. We are super excited to have her, and she is a member of our trombone faculty. But to kick it off, I'm going to go in score order, starting with trumpet. We have Dr. Rachel Samayoa, Jennifer Marotta, Kiku Collins, who we heard from not too long ago, Billy Hunter, who we will be hearing from very shortly, Chloe Rowlands, Rodney Marsalis, Brianne Borden, Megan DeJarnett, and Miss Kate Amrine, who is right over here to the left of me. Then on horn, we have Alex Shuhan, Jeff Scott, Jeff Nelson, Julie Landsman, and William Purvis, and Rachel Jenkins. On trombone faculty, like I said, we have Miss Nikki Abissi, John Rojak, Martin McCain, and the famous Abby Conant. On tuba euphonium, we have Reginald Chapman, Carol Yonch, Chanel Crislow, and Charles Villarubia. So this faculty obviously is incredible. You guys do not want to miss any moment of any of the classes that they are offering, and Kate is going to let you know a little bit about those classes.
All right. Hi, my name is Kate Amrine. I am a trumpet player and educator based here in New York City. I freelance with a bunch of different groups, and lately I've been sitting in this chair practicing and recording and living the dream from home. So let's hear about our schedule. So first, quick note, we have exactly 1 month left in registration. So registration closes January 7th. That is the day before the festival begins. Other quick notes, we have seven seems to be the lucky number for today, 7 days left in our Kickstarter. We have reached our goal, but we are always looking for more contributions and donations if you are able, and that includes sharing the page because every little bit helps, and any extra money that we are getting will be going towards future workshops. So our schedule is on our website. That is also where you register, brassoutloud.com. So the schedule, we have warm-up classes in the morning. We have a musician mindset class with Jeff Nelson. We have a yoga for all musicians class. We have a class on improvisation, a class on audition prep, a class on working with composers and commissioning. We have 2 amazing performance classes with a lot of the faculty that Melissa mentioned before. We have a Designing Your Career in Music class led by me, and then 2 awesome panels that I am super excited for. One is called Combating Racism in the Music World, and the other is called Looking to the Future. And both of these are really important conversations that we all definitely need to be having and being present for today. So super excited. So without any further ado, although a brief thank you to our sponsors, Yamaha, Robinson's Remedies, Shires and Edwards, and AR Resonance for sponsoring a masterclass. And then also in memory of Manas Valeru. So thank you so much for all of these amazing organizations and people for supporting us. You too could be one of them. All right, so welcome, Nikki Abissi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Nikki. We're just going to start out a little basic. So can you tell us about your upbringing as a musician and yeah, how you came to be for today?
Yeah. So I was born in the Bronx. I lived in New York until I was 12. So I was in New Rochelle until I was 6, and then out on Long Island, Port Jefferson, till I was 12. And so being around New York City, we would go to Broadway shows. I went to see the Rockettes every year. Music was always around my house. I don't know if any of you had this toy, but my favorite toy was that Fisher-Price record player, the music box. Maybe I'm a little older than you, but this was like a real thing, and they still make them. They reproduce them, but it was looked like a little record, and it would play music, and you could wind it up, and it was a music box, but you could pretend that you were playing records. And I think I played London Bridge until my parents wanted to pull their hair out. And my dad was always playing great music, like James Taylor, Jim Croce, Frank Sinatra, Billy Joel. Like those voices were the ones that really inspired me. And when we went to those Broadway shows, it was the male singers that I liked. I thought the ingenues had kind of nasal voices. I wasn't into it. That range and that timbre didn't inspire me in the same way. So in my elementary school, we picked string instruments in the 4th grade, and I was not interested at all. And then I was ready for band in 5th grade, and I knew I wanted to be different. Had that kind of artsy, artistic bent to me that I wanted to do something unique. And the trombone didn't have any buttons, so it was unique in that way. And then it also made the sound that I think I didn't understand it then, but later the fact that I loved it so much, I realized was like, oh, these are the voices that I always wanted to sing like. And now I get to be a tenor. I have a soprano singing voice in my body, but on the trombone, I get to be that tenor that I want to be. And ended up taking to it pretty well. So I stuck with it when we moved to Illinois. Illinois has a much bigger, better music program. Bands are like a big deal. In 6th grade in Illinois, when I moved, they had jazz bands, like 2 jazz bands, 6th grade jazz, and then the 7th and 8th grade jazz band. I didn't even know what a jazz band was when I moved there. They were like, oh, do you want to be in the jazz band? I was like, what's jazz? So I had a big ramp up, I think, to kind of get with the program. And I ended up getting a private teacher. And from there, I found out about Interlochen. I went to the camp and then the academy. And my time with Tom Riccobono at the academy was so important. I'm really proud I've sent a couple students there since, but because I worked with him, I feel like that was the difference to get me to go into the Juilliard School and study with Joe Alessi. After that, I was in the New World Symphony for a couple seasons. I won my first job in the Alabama Symphony, was there for 3 years. I did a 1-year principal trombone in the Colorado Symphony. And during that time is when I met my husband. So I didn't want to be halfway across the country from him. He was in Atlanta. I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. I was actually in the finals for the 2nd trombone audition in the Atlanta Symphony when Nathan Zagantz won. So I knew I was going to get to sub. And I've been freelancing ever since.
Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Everybody has such a different background, so this is really like such a great question to, I think, just start with.
Yeah.
For everybody.
I love it. I also love how, I was going to say basically the same thing, like how everyone's growing up, music that you listen to is completely different. So I had like such an opposite experience. Like I only listened to jazz and salsa growing up, and I hadn't ever heard anything Broadway wise or classical wise. It's so funny. Yeah, and here we all are doing the thing today. Um,
It's sort of an open-ended question too, so you never know how people are going to interpret it.
yeah. Well, I think, yeah, it's so much better than just being like, what are you doing right now? Like, yeah. I think it's especially great for younger people to see like how somebody's career goes in all sorts of different directions and like the whole like how you started and now you're here meme and like, yeah, all of that good stuff. Um, so shifting slightly to your life as a educator, so you teach at so many different places, and I was wondering how your teaching has adapted now in this time.
Well, right now I have my private students that have been on Zoom or Skype forever. I've been teaching some older people. I have an over 70-year-old who I've been working with for 8 years. So I've been doing the online lesson thing for over a decade. So this was kind of funny that everybody's doing it now. And I'm like, I've been doing this since I was in Atlanta. And then I have my Manus Prep students, and one of them is getting ready for college auditions. So we did, when the weather was good, we did lessons in my backyard. I'm like looking out the window, my backyard, so we could be super spread out, you know, like 15, 20 feet apart, wear masks when we're talking. It was just made sense because this is such an important year for her, to have when we had the opportunities to be together while the weather was allowing it, we did it. And otherwise, it's just been the normal over Zoom thing that everybody else has been doing. But since I've taught in that format for so long, it wasn't a big change for me. The hardest thing has been master classes, because when you're with one person, whether you're on the phone or you're on the internet like this, you can have a real back and forth rapport, right? There's that transference of energy, and you're having a conversation in the body language and hearing voices and whatever. But the master classes that I've done, especially at STS, so I was on Zoom and it was going live on YouTube, and I had no idea if anybody was listening. It's really difficult. And we did it that way because it was recorded and then people could access them at any time whenever they wanted to. But I was like, wow, this is very draining. And I think that's what the Zoom fatigue is for so many teachers right now when they're dealing with a classroom setting, because they aren't getting that energy back. There's no feedback. And you have to feed yourself with all that energy and come up with it from somewhere. And it's just exhausting.
Yeah,
That
for
makes
sure. I
sense.
totally, oh, but yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, especially if it's a very large class and even if you don't know any of the students, also, you're just like kind of throwing shots in the dark, hoping somebody says something. But it's also funny that you mentioned that you have an older student, because I started teaching an older student this year, and he is 78 or 76. And I love it. I absolutely love teaching him. So it's really, really funny that you mentioned that.
Are you okay? My dog is throwing up. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
She's old. I'm not paying attention to you. I just was letting you know that.
I'm sorry.
okay.
That's not fun.
It's okay.
The
All right.
joys of being online.
And being at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you sure? We could take a break if she's not. Okay. All right. Well, if everything is all good on that end, we're kind of going to change
Yeah.
into a different topic. We want to know about Extend-A-Bone, how it came to be, and what it is for everybody who doesn't know.
Well, let me get one. Oh, look, I have a box right here. So Extend-A-Bone is my product. It's a trombone slide extension handle. It's got a little shepherd's hook opening. It clips onto the slide, and you get to hold it just like you hold the trombone slide. So I tell the story that like I was privileged that when I was in 6th grade, basically a year after playing, my parents bought me an instrument with a valve. So I was completely unaware of problems of reaching seventh position because I could always use a valve to do it. So I'm short and I can't do it, but it didn't matter until I encountered a few pieces where it did matter. And the first one was Stravinsky's Pulchinella suite. And it was one of the audition pieces for placement at Juilliard. And my teacher, Joe, is like, he's trying to teach me to twist and do this and like all these tricks. And I'm just an inch too short, whether it's fingers or whatever, I'm an inch away. And he's like, well, you can't be the first person with this problem. So there has to be something that can help you. There's gotta be like a handle or something. And he was right. There was. It wasn't very good. It was metal and it scratched up my slide and it wasn't an elegant design, but there was something. And a little over 3 years ago, somebody is on the trombone pedagogy forum asking about this for their student or their child. And I'm like, oh, I know what they need. And I go to search to give them a link of like, you need to buy this handle. And it's gone. It's gone everywhere. I did more research and found out that the company went out of business, was bought by somebody else, and they just discontinued the product. Made me mad. I was like, why would you do that? It was the only thing available for short people. It was the only thing on the market. Like, what's wrong with you idiots? Bunch of tall men somewhere thinking, not thinking. I did more research, and even though the handle had always said patent pending, it never had a patent. I was like, oh, maybe I should do this. And I went on this insane journey to develop my own prototypes. And it took a long time to get it just right. I was lucky to have some really wonderful friends like Steve Dillon, who connected me with Stephen Greenall, who's the inventor of the P-bone and the P-trumpet and P-buzz. And I'm a huge fan of his and his forward-thinking innovations into brass pedagogy. So he mentored me through the process of creating my prototype and thinking about children's hands and trying to make like, what do you want it to serve? It's like, well, I want it to be supportive of good technique. I want it to be something that's easy for a professional to use and feels natural, but it also is something that I will feel good about putting in the hands of beginners, that they can naturally go back and forth and it's not going to impede their progress. But it was so cool talking to him about it and his process of making the P-bones. Like, they walked around their office on their knees to try to experience the world like a child size. I mean, they did like the coolest things. So I felt like so lucky that I got to have that voice in my head who's of like, okay, how am I going to make this the best? And what am I really trying to serve with it? So now it's a few years later, it is available in several countries. And I'm about to sell out of my first color. And I met the most amazing company, American Way Marketing, owns Super Slick and Fax mouthpieces. And they're one of the biggest distributors of accessories for all band instruments in the country. And through my contacts as a buffet artist, I play Antoine Courtois trombones, I was connected to somebody who works there who gave me the phone number of the president of the company, a woman. She dropped the name, she took my phone call. Turns out that they were just as mad about that old handle being discontinued as I was. And they tried to buy it. They tried to buy the mold. They tried to produce it because they understood how important it was for young trombonists. And it's like, oh my gosh, I finally found somebody in a company who knows how important this is. It turns out, in addition to having a woman in charge of the company, they have a trombone player as the vice president. So now I have a distributor, and they're working to get it into some of the bigger stores that it's hard to have like one person company get in there, like Guitar Center, Woodwind Brass Wind. But I also feel like I have a kindred spirit partnership with this company that understands that how important this is, because it's not just, I say it was insane. Like, this was not a way to make money. I am selling it, but mostly I'm just trying to dig my way out of the debt of what it costs to bring it to market. I'm created this because it was important, because people like me who are smaller deserve to have it, because there are school districts where those kids are never going to be able to have an instrument with a valve, right? The parents won't be able to afford it. The school districts can't buy those instruments. And that's why I say that this is a device of inclusion, and it's an equalizer. That if you don't have a lot of money, you can still play a P-bone and you can still reach seventh position. You can still be successful on the instrument and still have fun. And that's the point, right? It's not fun if you're struggling. It's not fun.
That is very, very true. It's not. So if y'all are watching and you're looking for some Christmas ideas or stocking stuffer, definitely check out Extend a Bone. We dropped it in the chat below. I think that's a beautiful project, and it reminds me kind of like Shark Tank, where you have to get the patent, you have to do all the prototypes. So
I mean, every episode, I've watched it as like research. I've watched every episode. I've been reading a bunch of books, and actually I recommend a lot of these books for artists. One is called, I love Damon John. I just think he's so great. He wrote a book called Rise and Grind, and he interviews a bunch of successful people, and they're not just like money successful. They're successful in whatever their own place is. In fact, one of them was a mother who had children with some learning difficulties, and the school district wasn't helping her children. They had dyslexia and I think some other things too, and the school district was not helping them. So she became trained to help her own children succeed. And then once they were gone and out of the house, then she started helping other people's kids, and she got a job like helping other people's families, sort of filling this role. So she's not like a rich person, but she's saw a need and she filled it in. And anyway, these are like highly ambitious people who just got up really early every day and went to bed really late and just got it done. And I saw so many parallels to what we do as artists and the journey of trying to improve your art, improve your craft. Business is not that different.
Yeah, it seems like definitely you dove into the entrepreneurship side of musicianship, which is totally different. I know Kate knows a lot about that, but I'm just now learning about that through Brass Out Loud. And I think, thank you for that book recommendation. And I would love to know if you have any other ones. We can definitely drop those in the chat as well.
I'm working on a new list. I have an Amazon book reading list for performers that's all about its performance anxiety and the science of learning. And I'll share that with you, but I'm also coming up was thinking I would do the same thing for business things, marketing, sales. Not that I think that every musician needs to be their own boss, but there are so many things that we're not told in music school. No, they don't have classes about how to organize and labor laws and unions and what the role of your union is. If you're lucky, you have the local come in and do like one presentation one time. I just spent the last 13 months and as a member of a negotiating committee trying to negotiate a first contract. And before that, there was like a year of people trying to just get the word out and get the vote to have us as a unit say that we wanted to be represented by the union. Like all of the steps of organizing, especially for a first contract, it was insane how many things we had to learn. And then COVID happened and management won't sit at the table with us anymore. And that's a whole different story. But unions are a big part of our lives as musicians, whether you are in a collective bargaining unit of like the New York Philharmonic, that you have your own organization, or you are an independent contractor with lots of different organizations. And this stuff isn't taught in school, and it really needs to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I was just talking with a friend the other day about having a more inclusive education as a performance major. There are so many parts about the industry that we just don't learn. So you go to school and you don't learn any of this. You learn how to play your scales, but what about when you graduate? What happens next? So I think that's super important.
Yeah.
And it really sucks to learn things the hard way. We've all done it, but it's not fun. And so whenever I'm giving master classes, I'm like, let me tell you about some of the things so you don't make those same mistakes. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For professionals like us to be willing to say what we didn't do right, what we did wrong, right? Like I have been giving a master class around, like I've shopped it around, done it a bunch of times now, about how to create your own career in music. And what I'm trying to open their eyes to is that there are opportunities around you when you're in school to develop marketable skills. And things like, what's your work study? I work in the registrar's office. Okay, you have office experience. That is very useful. Why don't you talk to your boss and ask them what would the job description be if they had to hire somebody to do what you do as a work study? And would you help me write a work resume? Right? And like write down all of the skills of all of the software that you know how to do, and understanding how your like just work study job that you probably don't think about at all, how that actually looks on paper as a business resume. And also accepting the fact that most people have to have multiple income streams, right? At some point in your career, you're going to have a day job. It's just the way it is. And I even use a bunch of high profile people where I say like they don't get their paycheck from one place. Their paychecks come from lots of places, these famous people. So even they're doing it. Try to take that stigma out. And I'm hoping that the kids that I get to talk to will realize that there are opportunities around them, and they can not only find marketable skills, but maybe find one that they enjoy. Somebody was like a super coffee nerd. I was like, great. He's already working as a barista. I was like, well, why don't you start a blog? Why don't you start an Instagram account just for the coffee stuff? People love it. Just get into it. You're enjoying it. It's your hobby. See what you can do with it on the side in addition. People who are really interested in recording, work in the recording department at your school, and you'll get on-the-job training in something that you find interesting that's extremely useful to a lot of people and to yourself. Don't miss out on these opportunities. And that's not to say that this doesn't replace practicing, right? You still have to practice a ton. But having done it the right way, right? I went to Juilliard, I went to New World Symphony, I had my orchestra jobs, and I still ended up at a place where I really could have used a day job. But I've never worked retail. I've never worked in an office. I was never even a babysitter. I have no on-paper skills for jobs except orchestra librarian and play the trombone. And until I got my master's degree after I moved to New York, I couldn't even teach because I didn't have enough on-paper things. So yeah, I play the trombone really well. I practiced a whole lot, but that doesn't feed you. If I didn't have my sugar daddy husband, I would have been on the street. Of course, I also wouldn't have been in New York in the first place, but you've got to, all I want to do in my life is help other people. And if I can help them by telling them what I did wrong, then I will shout it to the rooftops.
Yes. I love it. You are speaking so much truth right now. Oh, I don't want to steal Melissa's fire. I'm done.
Oh, I don't know what you meant by that, but yes, thank you for sharing all of that. Oh yeah, it appears that it's time for the next question. So, we're in this unprecedented time, as some might say. How have you been keeping sane and busy?
Keeping busy is not difficult. I had my kids home with me nonstop. And distance learning for a 3-year-old sucks, especially my 3-year-old. It was not fun. When we finally got to move back, and I was living at my parents' house. That was also fun. My parents are delightful, but it was a lot to have 4 adults and 2 very small children and 3 dogs. Eventually I had to move my dog to my in-laws because the two little females were at each other's throats, and my dog drew blood on their dog. Yeah, they were fighting over the male, I think. Bitches. Literally.
Women can be so competitive.
Well,
Yeah, they couldn't handle it, and my cats were living in a bedroom by themselves because my dad's allergic. It was a mess. September we got to move back to New Jersey, and my kids we're going to camp and then school, but that's 4.5 hours a day that I don't have them, and that's it. 5 days a week, 4.5 hours. If I want to clean, if I want to shower, exercise or practice, or anything, it's like that's my window of time. It's easy to be busy. I never lack for things to do. I think also feeling that worry about money and job safety and job security, and realizing that right before this pandemic, I had just bought my mold, the injection mold, and product was coming and I had to sell it. I couldn't turn back now. I really went guns blazing at Extendabone because I felt like that was the thing that was going to give me the most return on investment for my time. And I also felt this immense pressure to like that. Did I just make a giant mistake to launch a product for band instruments when we don't even know if playing brass instruments together is safe? Like, this was all March and April. It was very, very scary. Now things are kind of turning around, and I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel that we are going to get to play together again. And I'm trying to spend more of my time thinking about just trombone, which makes me happy, and not putting so much pressure on myself for the not shooting all over myself, as you say.
I love it. And also, you mentioned that, obviously the timing was not great, but in some ways I imagine the timing was kind of perfect because everyone is just sitting at home online. So like they are definitely seeing what you're posting instead of running around the city immersed in everyone else's project. So that is kind of a nice thing in some ways.
That is interesting, but also teachers are overwhelmed and directors are
Yeah.
overwhelmed. Facebook is the only place you can communicate with them. So that's been kind of interesting. And some of them, the kids are not playing their instruments, right? They're not in person, and it's just a whole different ballgame. But if you watch Shark Tank, there's also two people who they're talking about having to pivot, right? They're having to change tactic. There was this awesome cleaning product company that they sell the glass bottles and then little tablets. So you just add water and the tablet, and that's your new, I think it was like Blue Lake or Blue something. And they were originally going to go into big box stores. Nobody's shopping in big box stores. They were closed forever. So they went direct to consumer and were selling with videos online and social media, and it blew up. And it's a higher profit margin. It was made a lot of sense. And I've watched a few of the episodes this season of the new people, like the people dealing with COVID. And it's like, okay, yeah, my plan was to go to the music stores and band. Like I had that plan, and now I have to have a different plan. What's happening now? What is our life right now? Let's deal with the reality that we're in right now. And that's true with just our instruments. Like, what is our reality right this minute? What can I do? Not what can't I do?
Yeah, for sure. We're all definitely having to pivot, to use the words that you used, and figure out what do we do now in this new future. And so I agree with Kate. I've definitely have seen Extendabone during this time. So definitely some social media. It's been having a big social media presence because of this. So I think that's good.
It's working.
Yeah, it is working. It's awesome. So to shift gears slightly, so you mentioned your partner is also a musician and a trombone player. And so I was wondering, how do you handle both being parents and musicians? Like that is its own question. And then also now during busy times and COVID times and all of the above.
Um, well, my husband Colin is the best. He's just, he's such a wonderful partner, and he's always been my partner and always believed in me more than I believe in myself. You can't, it doesn't work otherwise, right? And in addition to that, like our partnership as just husband and wife and musicians, he's an incredibly involved parent. This is, I mean, daddy does diapers, he does dishes, he does bath time, he packs lunches, he answers the teacher emails, like he does all the things that I do. So sometimes he was chair of the negotiating committee for the New York Philharmonic during this incredibly difficult negotiation. And it was thousands of hours. It was very hard, but I feel like it was harder on me because I'm used to him helping. I'm like, I'm used to you doing 50%. So now all of a sudden I have to do 100%. It was a lot harder. I think people who are used to doing it all themselves most of the time, and unfortunately there are a lot of parent relationships like that where one person is the primary caregiver, but that's not our house. So it made it even harder for me to do without him sometimes. But we always we communicate and we talk about things. We keep a calendar together on our phones, so I know when he's teaching. If I want to add an extra lesson or if I want to do a master class, I just check and make sure that it's going to work, that there isn't something he forgot to put in the calendar. We both are trying to find more time for practicing. And so we'll say, like, is this a good time for me to go make some noise? Are you okay with the kids? Yeah, okay. We just trade off. And we also try to be supportive and a good influence on one another. And when it's like, oh, I don't want to practice right now, like go help motivate one another. So there were so many horror stories and jokes about people getting divorced or like hating being in quarantine with one another. And that was not a problem. It was like, okay, thank God I had him, is how I felt. Like I can do this if I have him with me. Like we'll survive.
I love it. It's so sweet.
Yes, that is definitely a beautiful relationship that everybody should aspire to have. I love the equality in it. That's great.
Have you seen the movies about Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
I have not.
Okay.
I have, yeah. But please tell us more.
So there's one of them that is it's a Hollywood movie on the basis of sex, and it's a delightful movie. They kind of take a few of her cases and turn them into like an amalgamation. It's like one case in the movie, but it's really like a few. But her husband, Marty, was so ahead of his time and just completely behind her, totally respected her and wanted her to succeed. And when we watched the movie together and I was like, you're my Marty. It's like it's a very similar relationship, the two of them and the two of us. I feel like it was very similar. And I also was inspired by her that she went through this time in her 30s where she was teaching at Rutgers. She was teaching law, but she wasn't able to get a job in a New York law firm because she was a woman. And she wasn't living her life, the life that she had intended. She wasn't having the career that she wanted. And it was like not later in life, but it was then that the court cases that came out and her being able to go to the Supreme Court and really showing who she was, and then becoming a judge and a justice and all those things later. But she didn't have this like easy, smooth, perfect path from Harvard. She went through this period where she was the wife of the successful lawyer with the two kids, but she wasn't being the lawyer she wanted to be. And that resonated so much with me. and with my journey, that I don't feel like my career doesn't look like how I thought it was going to, and maybe it isn't where I want it to be yet. But seeing what she did in her life, I found it so inspiring. Like, you're not done. I'm not done. She wasn't done. Like, this isn't the end of my story. This is just one of the middle chapters.
Yes, so inspiring. And I think a lot of us need to hear that right now. So thank you. To sort of shift gears again, could you tell us a little bit about the practice room, your online Facebook resource, and how that came to be? I know that a lot of brass players and other players are really inspired by it. So yeah.
This is kind of a funny place to get inspiration, but it was from a fashion blog. I followed this blog that I found on Pinterest called Classy Yet Trendy. And she wrote, do you know what I'm talking about, Kate? No, you're just laughing.
I just love the title. That's amazing.
She's from Alabama. She lives in southern Alabama, like below Birmingham, I think. And she made these capsule wardrobe ebooks. And she ended up doing so well selling these ebooks that she was able to quit her day job. And this like became her main job. So in addition to her blog and the ebooks, she had a Facebook group. And the Facebook group has tens of thousands of members. And it's very active. And there's people of like all walks of life, but it's very supportive. Like, you are not allowed to say mean things. We're not allowed to be negative. You get out. Like, if you can't say something nice, you don't say anything at all, kind of thing. And I was sort of inspired by that, of like, okay, I was trying to think of how I could get my name out more as a teacher and like tell people who I am as a teacher and what I have to offer. But I thought that having another Facebook page, another business page, this was like a few years ago now, but I was like, that's just, who's going to follow that? But then I was thinking about this group. I was like, this group is so great. And it transcends her and her business. But it also is a vehicle for her to talk about she does. And so that's why I started the practice room. I was like, well, I was also sort of frustrated with some of the other trombone pedagogy groups, and how loud some of the people were about their opinions. And the fact that you could ask a question and somebody would fundamentally disagree with the basis of your question and then get on you about it. Like, I'm asking about buzzing, a buzzing exercise for blah, blah, blah. Well, you shouldn't even be buzzing, this buzzing, blah, 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 right? It's like, if you don't agree with the premise of what I'm asking for help with, then just walk along, just scroll, just let it go. But I didn't want it to just be for brass players. I wanted it to be for everybody. And I wanted it to be the kind of group that I want to be a part of. So I made the daily hashtags just as like a guide for something to talk about. Not that it's the only thing. And I wanted to take an opportunity to create a wholesome, supportive environment where we could take the power out of our fears by sharing them with one another. So that's the Fearful Friday or Fearless Friday. By telling people what you are, by me setting an example, by saying what I'm afraid of, other people are empowered to be brave and to say what they're afraid of. And then we can be the voice of reason for one another. That like, yeah, you're scared of that, but that's not reality. That's just a filter. That's not the way that other people see you. And we can help one another. It's been really fun seeing so many people be like, I don't normally share like this, but, and then they say something like, oh, makes me feel so good. I kind of let it do its thing for a little while. I just didn't have the energy. And lately I've been like doubling down and going back in there because I realized how many people were sneaking in videos. They're just like random trolls trying to share their YouTube channel. I'm like, delete. That's not what we're doing here. I believe in we're going to start doing something where you can share what you're doing so that we can support one another, but it's going to be in a very controlled manner and with the message of like community support, not just spam.
Yeah, we struggled with that with the female trans non-binary group as well. Everyone has so many amazing things to share, and I want to hear about all of them. But yes, we also don't want every page, and especially these like supportive groups, to be a place of like bragging instead of like let's talk about the thing that we're all here that we want to talk about, which is supporting each other, whether it's like based on gender and sex or just practicing. So yay. I also really loved, I linked to the group, so hopefully people will see that. But I really loved the post you posted in there recently about like why people post videos of themselves playing and like how whether it's based on their age and how comfortable you are with that, because I feel like that's such a thing right now that we're seeing is like everyone's doing like 100 days of practice or like listen to me play my scales on Instagram, and there's just this like crazy range of people posting like Christmas carols or like here's my 10 trumpet arrangement of this orchestra piece, and like we're all being bombarded with so many things, which is amazing, but also like some of them aren't that great, and then like how to we as performers decide what to post in our own careers. It's like there's so many things to talk about with that post.
I was sort of,
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to look at it, but I was kind of struck by it seems like there's a generational thing of a younger than me generation generally feels more comfortable just putting stuff out there. And I don't know if it's the generational thing or if it's just like once you become a professional, you're like more protective of your reputation and we have to be more careful, or we feel like we have to be more careful with what we put out there. I don't know where it comes from. So I was like, is it generational? Is it just being raised with social media in a different way? Is it the professional versus amateur, younger people? But sometimes they are professionals and they're still very brave and open. And I'm like, I want to understand where that comes from because I want more of that unself-consciousness of just, I'm just enjoying myself making music. And so I'm going to put it out there. And so I was like, let's break it down. Like, who can help me understand this? And how can I get that for myself? How can I give that to my students? That like empower them to just play with reckless abandon and just go out and do what you want to do. So I love it. And I thought it was important to see like, sometimes they're just high school kids. And it was cool that people were like, oh, I just use it as a way to keep track of my practice videos. I'm just recording myself practicing for me. Like, I don't care if anybody's watching it. Meanwhile, they have thousands of followers. It's like, if you aren't trying, then you get more. This is kind of what it seemed like.
Well, even just to get young people to record themselves, I think is pretty amazing because, I mean, that's something that teachers have always, talked to everyone about. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll totally do it. And I had my little cassette tape and like, I totally didn't do it. I didn't record myself very much growing up. Like it was hard. The technology obviously wasn't really there. And now, it's just so easy for them to do it. And so I feel like, there's no hesitation. And like whether you post it or not, it's like the fact that you're recording yourself means you're going to learn from the experience. And that is what it also is all about. So it's very interesting.
I'm just like trying to chime in on something else that you had said. In terms of like, having your group be like this kind of like safe haven. We're not arguing about anything. It's just so common to go into Facebook groups, even just scrolling through like your normal feed, and people just, some people are just so rude and have to feel like they comment on everything. I'm in like one of these like gypsy housing groups for like New York City, and it was weird because the other day someone had posted like a picture of like their apartment, like very clean and everything, but the bed was, instead of going like, like a normal bed goes like straight out, they had it turned sideways, kind of like a day bed. And there were so many people commenting about why is your bed like that? I'm like, this is what we're arguing about on the internet. Like there are much better things to get upset about than a bed being turned differently than you want it to be. But I really like this idea of like having a group and just being like, look, like we're here to support each other, and this isn't meant for, arguments and tearing people down. And I think that some of this self-consciousness that we feel, people who didn't like necessarily grow up having like Instagram as soon as you were born and all this stuff that kind of came further down on the road, I think some of this insecurity of, you know, posting on the internet comes from seeing all these other comments about just, you know, the most random stuff, like, and people like ripping on you for it. And it's like, well, I don't want to post something and then people rip on me. And I think that some of this self-consciousness comes from, you know, seeing how social media has worked in that kind of way where people feel more powerful, I guess, behind the keyboard. And I just think that some of this insecurity, you know, for me and for other people comes from, you know, seeing all this negativity also online, not just the positive stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, that's absolutely, we're all, and I think that the people that don't worry about it are the ones who can see a troll say something mean and be like, whatever. And like, they just delete, I don't care. And I'm not good at that yet. I'm getting better, but I'm not, I have to like deal with it and the hurt before I can put it away. I don't automatically have that guard of like, so what? You know, I wish I did, but I don't have that yet. I think something else that is interesting in these groups is what your assumptions are about the person, right? Like sometimes people can say something that's ignorant or whatever, but it doesn't come from a bad place, right? Like the female trans non-binary group. Early on, there had been so many people posting who were cisgendered females that I wrote something and I put like, hey ladies, or whatever at the top. And somebody commented like, not everybody is a lady in this group. I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right. I'm going to change it right now. And I did. And I appreciated so much that they took the time to call me out, but also not in a way that they're like, how dare you, you know, because it was from an ignorant place just of like not thinking, you know, it wasn't because I wanted to make that mistake. And I appreciated being told that I'd made a mistake in a way that allowed me to just correct it and learn and move forward and not make that mistake again, you know. But talking to me from that position of like, I accept you in your mistake, and I'm not going to judge you for your mistake, but I'm going to help you not make that mistake again. And I think if we can all interact with one another from that place of acceptance and non-judgment of like, you know, actually blah, 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 not like, how dare you, then we could have a lot more interesting and helpful discussions in general. You can disagree with somebody or just know that somebody's incorrect, but tell them in a way that they'll listen to you. And so often we just do name calling and finger pointing, and we don't give the other person the opportunity to maybe rethink things. They're not going to listen to you through that.
I definitely agree. And I think that's something else kind of going off of, you know, just that conversations and other conversations that I've seen in that group and other groups. It's this idea of, you know, sometimes people say things, we can say it's ignorant, but sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. And that's okay as long as you're willing to listen and, you know, grow from that. And I think that sometimes some people are very stuck in their own ways and don't want to change their point of view, for example. You know, like, again, like, hey ladies, like in like, you know, the female trans non-binary group, I mean, again, I mean, somebody could have, like you were saying, somebody could have, you know, said a lot of, you know, hateful things and, you know, point fingers, called names. And, you know, it was great that like you were willing to like address it and say, you know, I definitely agree with you. And I think that there are people who are not willing to admit that they're wrong. I mean, there were other things that I had seen where, both in the group and outside of the group, where I have a lot of interest in, like, to do with like ableism and stuff like that. People with invisible illnesses and diseases. I myself have something called dysautonomia, and nobody can see that I don't function as well as other people, but I don't. So one of the things that I've like seen a lot about on multiple various different groups on Facebook is just this idea of different terms that we don't like, and things that aren't okay to do. Like, somebody I follow had posted the other day about how she was trying to go to like a post office and it wasn't wheelchair accessible, and the people in the building were um, not very helpful in getting her access to the building through this elevator that they had, and the elevator is not accessible, and when you called them they didn't answer. So it was like this whole big thing for her, and it comes down to this point where it's one of those things where when you try to address something such as ableism or sexism or genderism or anything, you have to be willing to listen. And it's really frustrating for, I think, a lot of people when people aren't willing to listen, which is then why I think that a lot of these conversations then explode on social media, because you have one person saying this, another person saying, hey, this term is a little bit offensive. You take into consideration, the audience that you're talking to, and then you can fight back whether this term is in the dictionary or this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, okay, it might be in the dictionary, but it's not appropriate for the way that you're using it. And I think that I'm not just talking in circles, but you have to be able to be willing to listen and address the problem if somebody brings it to you politely. And even if somebody doesn't bring it to you politely, I mean, sometimes it's one of those things where you have to like take those extra words around the point with a grain of salt and just say, okay, are they right to an extent? I mean, did they have to call me this expletive and that thing and the other thing? No, but
Yeah,
what was the point?
listening openly. I think sometimes we all hear through a filter, and it's the filter changes constantly. Like, my husband and I were talking about this, that we have a couple people for each of us that we've had bad blood in the past. So when we get a new communication from one of these people, we can't help but read some of the like aggressive undertones. Then somebody else who gets along with them reads it and doesn't see it at all. It's like, well, I can't ignore my history with this person. And so that's why I see it, but maybe it's not as aggressive as I think it is. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Or there was somebody who, I guess we had like our first interaction, the first time I met her, but I knew her husband. And I found out later through something on she like posted something in that group about, what did I say? I guess I made her think that I thought that you had to have children to be like a grown up or be like a real woman or something. And she was really upset about this. I thought about it and was like, that day I had my second baby. I was completely sleep deprived. I was like, just played this concert with the New Jersey Symphony, and I'm like meeting this new person, and I think I was trying to be funny, and I was saying like, now I know what being a real like I used to think that I was busy, and now I know what it really means to be busy or something like that. Like I don't believe that you have to have kids to be a woman. In fact, before I met my husband, I was really aggressively like, I am not just a baby maker. And then I met this man and I couldn't help, like my ovaries exploded with excitement. But I didn't rush into having kids either. Anyway, that's not my belief and that was not my intention. And I'm forever upset that I can't make it right with her. I tried and I think she's too hurt and there's just no way to make it right. And it breaks my heart. But I also had to let go for my own sanity of like, she heard this through the own filter of all of the people who had meant something mean, or it's her own stuff was in that filter, and I can't make up for that. I can, going forward, try to choose my words more carefully with people and be a little bit more aware of what I'm doing, and try to not have the same thing happen with somebody else. But it wasn't all on me, but I can try to see what I can do better going forward. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to, like you were saying, I'm trying to find where I think I could do better. Where is my role in this? But at the same time, it's not 100% on me either, because there were things in there that I didn't know about. Meeting somebody for the first time, I didn't know their stuff. I can't help that.
Well, and you could never know. So, I mean, it's one of those, it's right. It's one of those things where it's like, you just don't know. And you can't take that too personally, because you're unaware of those other situations, and you could never, you could have never had been aware of those other situations. So it comes down to it. It's like, everybody has different, like, this is something my mom always says, like, your feelings are your feelings, and they're valid. Like, regardless of how you feel towards something that somebody said to you, something that somebody did, something you saw online, you are allowed to be upset about anything. You're allowed to be, ecstatic and happy and, about something else. And everybody has different experiences with different things. So when it comes to emotions, it's not that people's emotions are wrong. It's just they are.
Yeah.
But I think that this was like a really great conversation to have. I think that the practice room is great. It's a great resource for people to go and get, help in the sense of needing support and encouragement to get through things. I think it's great on you that, like, you're able to like sit in the page and say, this is not what we need for this. We're not arguing about this, X, Y, and Z. This is what this page is about, and this is how we're going to look at it moving forward.
I wanted
to thank you for that.
I wanted to normalize the crazy that we all feel, basically. I think we're musicians. If you're going to get to a certain point, you're going to be a little bit OCD, going to be a little bit of a perfectionist, you're going to be a little bit sensitive, maybe a little more than a little bit in any of those categories. And the stuff that we deal with is normal. And when you have somebody who's a professional that you look up to saying that they have these thoughts and feelings and worries that you do as a student, like, that makes you feel understood. And like, oh, it's not just me, right? There's that Brene Brown book, I Thought It Was Just Me. We have all these thoughts in our head, this like negative self-talk and all the things that we're dealing with inside. And we feel like we're alone. We're the only one who's experiencing that. And I think that that's damaging to students. And I think it's damaging to our community, and it's damaging to our well-being. And I wanted to take that away of like, no, let's pull back the curtain. Even the people in the top orchestras in the world are beating themselves up when they miss one note at the end of like in the middle of a concert. They're still thinking about it a week later. We're all crazy together.
Yeah, and it's just the importance of normalizing, like, I guess, those feelings, because we all have them. We all have them. So kind of, I guess, going off this kind of topic, but going into something else a little bit kind of similar, kind of not really. First, anybody watching on Facebook, if you have any questions for Nikki, please drop them now. Now would be a great time to get your questions in if you have any. And we are going to ask our last question. So Nikki, what does your ideal brass community look like?
It looks like the world looks. I think that in the brass community should be as diverse as the real world. Colin and I love Star Trek. And we were watching Discovery and talking about some of the new ways that Star Trek is trying to represent more people, not just by races, but also different gender representation. And I think that if we want to have an ideal, it should be inclusive of everybody, right? It should look like the real world looks. Not everybody is cisgender, not everybody is straight, not everybody is white or black, or, you know, there's a mix. We're all a mix. I actually was very proud of something that's been happening in the trombone festival organization, that they're, in addition to trying to represent lots of people, they're trying to represent lots of parts of the world. So saying like, yeah, some of the most famous brass players are from America, but actually South America, Asia, Europe, like there's lots of fantastic brass players from all over the world. And they're also playing different kinds of music. It's not just being in an orchestra. And I can hear Colin in the kitchen. And I think that that's what it should be. It should be as diverse in look and perspective and language and style of music, all of those things.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think we all hear that and hope it resonates. And we are seeing some changes happening because of the pandemic and just everybody being aware of these issues that have been existing. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to say that Miss Nikki Abissi will be teaching a warm-up session at Brass Out Loud's festival on Friday, January 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern. So if you want to hear more amazing things from her, definitely check that out. And you can register, as Kate said, at brassoutloud.com.
Awesome. And then just for anybody looking to register, again, its registration fees is $120 for the 3-day pass. Each individual day pass is $50 if you're looking to just sign up for a day. And again, our Kickstarter will be live for one more week. So, you know, anything helps. We are looking to, you know, further this organization, go nonprofit, and, you know, the whole 9 yards. So this is not the end of Brass Out Loud in January. We do want to keep going on. So we do need your help and support. So Nikki, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for sharing all these, you know, wise words of wisdom and perspectives that you have on, you know, the world and in the music community. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
All right, everybody, and we'll be back Friday at 10 a.m. for Bold Chats number 7. So we will see you Friday. Have a good one.